Welcome to ECDP Television. You are watching The Edge with Seema Anand. The Edge is a brand new program which has been sponsored by the Essex Cultural Diversity Project, and it seeks to look at all the new and innovative things that are happening in the arts and talk to all the amazing artists who are making it happen. And so my guest today, the artist with a real edge, is Rehmat Rayatt. Now Rehmat, I have to tell you, is the woman with a skill set that is like gold dust as far as I'm concerned. She is an award-winning photographer and filmmaker. She's a yoga teacher. She's a Reiki master. But as I said, to me, her skill set is really like gold dust, because in today's age, when we're all trying to move to the digital space, whether it's for work, whether it's for socializing, whether it's for studying, and most of us are struggling because we don't know how to do this, this is the woman who has all the answers. And so, Rehmat, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, Rehmat, there's just so much that I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about how to move comfortably and without being totally intimidated by the digital space into this new arena that we all have to work with. And I know that there's lots of things that you can tell us about it because this is where you work. But I want to actually start with this incredible documentary that you made, your most recent documentary, Toxification, which I want to be able to tell our audiences. This is a documentary that has been watched across the world. It has won awards across the world. And it is absolutely amazing because even though it wasn't made very recently, it is even more topical today because the subject of this documentary has been in the headlines of Indian news for the last 3 months. It's what all of India has been focusing on for 3 months. And Rehmat, I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, so the film is called Toxification, and the reason why this topic has become so current is because of a number of laws, 3 agricultural laws which were passed last year, essentially in 2020, and they threaten to weaken small-scale farmers' livelihoods quite drastically. So yeah, that's why it's become a very current issue. And you're right, it was filmed in 2014, so it was filmed quite a long time ago. But what's happened is that the issues that we captured in Toxification have become more and more, kind of painful and challenging for the farmers, and created this situation where farmers are now protesting. So there is a large-scale protest. Many people are saying it's the biggest protest that has ever happened in the world. And there have been protests globally as well. There have been protests here where I live in London, Canada, USA, Australia, all over the globe. So it's really becoming a worldwide phenomenon, and I feel so glad and kind of proud that we were able to capture that story as it was unfolding back in 2014, so that we can kind of shed light on the context behind what's happening now. So that's what's really important for me, that people are watching Toxification now so that they can understand the complexities of the situation that we find ourselves in now.
Yeah, people tend to generally refer to the subject as the farmer suicides, but it isn't, when you say it like that, it almost seems like isolated incidents, but it isn't. It's almost like a mini plague. And I think that there is probably not a single family across the agricultural landscape of Punjab who have not suffered a loss of a family member through these problems. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so you're right. I think a lot of people think that farmer suicide is a phenomenon which just happens kind of on its own, but it's actually propped up by a number of other situations which allow it to kind of happen and be so prevalent. So farmer suicide is kind of at the center of my film Toxification, but there are kind of these other aspects which it leans on. So we talk about the toxification of the land, which is agricultural chemical overuse and the damage that has done to the land. Toxification of the body, which is actually drug abuse, a topic which is very much kind of under the carpet in Punjab, and in recent years it's been a little bit more kind of talked about, but it's very much something which a lot of people are not aware is connected with the other issues in Punjab. So, and then we've got the toxification of the mind, which is the mental health side, things like loans and all of the stresses of farming generally, which have created this situation. So it is about the fact that it's a very complex problem, and that's just, I mean, this is a surface level kind of explanation or exploration of the film, but there's so much more to it, and it is something that you kind of need a bit of time to understand it, and so Toxification is just over an hour long, and it does need that time for you to understand and kind of unravel the stories. And the most important thing for me is that Toxification is told through the stories of the farmers themselves. So there's no narrator, there's no one kind of telling their stories for them. It was really important for us that they were allowed to tell their own stories, because if we're not able to amplify their voices, then we're actually disempowering them by taking their voices and repackaging them into our own Western lens or whatever it is, and then kind of sending it out there. So it was really important that we didn't repackage their words, and we just kind of allowed them to express what was real for them.
So tell me, you said you started this, you made this in 2014. You were very, very young at that point. Tell me what led to the making of this documentary, and is it what you had planned to do, or did it just kind of happen? Take us through the journey.
Yeah, what a journey. I'm like the laughing stock of my family, because so I was 24, 23 or 24 when we began this process in the beginning of 2014. And my family kind of, they often refer to me as a coconut, which means brown on the outside and white on the inside. So it's this idea that as a kind of first generation British born Indian, I don't identify with the values that my parents' generation or their parents' generation identify with. So yeah, it's always kind of been a inside joke that I'm, not very cultured, or I don't really speak Punjabi and all of those kind of things. So yeah, I mean, it's my parents find it hilarious that as a 24-year-old girl, along with my colleague Leva Questani, who has no connection with India or Punjab, she's Kurdish, the two of us, two young girls, decided to just fly out to India and make this film. It's just, yeah, it's actually, yeah, it's something that we laugh about a lot. But what's even more interesting is that Leva and I went out actually to make a 5-minute short film. And that was literally the premise. So we did, and you'd be amazed by how much research goes into just a 5-minute film. So we had been researching for months just for this 5-minute film, and we flew out, and we were going to spend a month making this 5-minute film, and that was kind of quite I would say normal. And then obviously we got there, and while we were doing these interviews, we were realizing, like, this is not going to fit into 5 minutes. This interview is so intense, and if we were to cut it down and cut all of these interviews down and make them fit into 5 minutes, it would just be so surface level, and it wouldn't have any depth, because the depth that we were getting in each interview was just like mind-blowing. It was so mind-blowing. Each interview we were like looking at each other like, oh my god, like, what is happening here? This is so real, this is so poignant, and this needs to be kind of honoured in the best way possible. It's not just going to squeeze into a 5-minute film. So while we were there, we started saying, oh, okay, maybe it's 10 minutes long, and then it became 20 minutes long, and then 30 minutes long, and then there was a point when people would ask us, how long is your film? And we'd be like, we don't know, because it was just so, like, it wasn't planned that way. And so, yeah, we kind of came back to the UK in early 2015, I believe. And that's when we started the editing process. And that's when we found out it was a feature film. And with feature films, I mean, if you look at any other kind of director, the directors of the big Hollywood or Bollywood films, these directors are like, they're not in their 20s for sure. Like, they're a lot older than that. They've honed their skill set. They've really understood how to make films like properly, and they've been in the industry for a number of years, and that's when they've decided that they were sort of ready enough to make their first feature film. And at the age of, I suppose we were probably about 25 then, we had a feature film on our hands. And so it was really, really daunting, and really I kind of had my own demons, and I battled with my own kind of not feeling good enough or worthy enough to put this film out there. But yeah, we pushed through, and I'm really, really glad that we did, because this film, I mean, even when we were working on it, it was important for sure, because it tells human stories of challenge and resilience. And now I think it's become even more important, because those stories are even more necessary to understand and to hear, because what's going on in India is essentially, currently, it's like a divide, where there are people who are for the farmers and there are people who are against the farmers. And, if there's no dialogue happening, if we're not able to understand the other side of the story, then, I just feel like you end up being tunnel visioned all your life. So for us, making a film which was as kind of neutral as possible was important. And hearing from, we've got an agricultural minister in our film, from the government, and we hear from him, because it was important that we heard and understood what his kind of stance was. So I think that's really important, and it's become much more important in kind of recent months and recent years. It was a phenomenal journey, and it was never something that we expected. But yeah, I'm just so grateful for the journey.
So I love the idea that, where your parents said, okay, you as a British-born Asian, you don't really connect with India in the proper sense. And I can understand what your parents were saying, because as an Indian who has moved to this country, and my children who were born over here, I see that they look at India with very rose-tinted glasses. It's the holiday spot, it's the party spot, it's where they go to get their shopping done. There's this sort of romance about the country. And did you find, when you went there, did you actually go with your eyes wide open? Is that something that you expected to see? Was it a big shock? What happened?
Yeah, it was a big shock. So it sounds like my experience has been similar to maybe your children's experience, where when we used to go to India, we didn't have any family there, so we would stay in hotels, we would go and see like the monuments, and it was a holiday destination. And I had kind of already picked up on the fact that was really strange, because it's also meant to be my motherland. So I kind of always I had already understood that there was something that was kind of weird about my relationship with India. But when we went to film Toxification, I realized how my perception had, I only had my one perception of India, and that was it, and that was what I thought India was. So for the first time when we were filming Toxification, we were staying, in the villages, we were staying on the farmland, which was a magical experience for me, because I had never seen India like that before. And I had never kind of driven around the villages and just seen village life and spoken to village people. And that was really eye-opening for me. I think what was most kind of challenging about it was that when we arrived in the village that we did most of our filming in, it's an area, it's kind of the south of Punjab, it's called Sangrur. And when we arrived there, we ended up being driven there. And while we were driving, there are fields on either side of the road. Like everywhere you go in these kind of rural areas, there are just fields on either side. And there were fields that were really lush and green, but also you'd turn a corner, and I remember we were driving, and both fields on either side were literally black, like pitch black. They were completely black. And I remember saying to the driver, "What's happened here?" And he said, "Well, they burned the field." And I was so mortified, because, as you said, I had these rose-tinted glasses of Punjab being this kind of lush, fertile kind of land. And actually, here I was in Punjab, and the fields are like completely black, and there's just ash everywhere. And I learnt from the farmers that the reason why a lot of the fields were black was because there are so many challenges with farming. That's kind of what I learned. But this particular challenge was that there are farmers who so once they've harvested, so once they've got their rice or their wheat, once all of that is done, you're left with a lot of kind of waste material, and you either pay for that to be disposed. I mean, they don't have, here in the UK we have someone who comes and collects our rubbish. They don't have that, so they have to pay for it to be disposed, or they burn it. And so they choose to burn it because they don't have that that kind of expendable income where they can just go, yeah, I'm going to pay for this to be disposed. And the other thing is that in burning the field, it means that the weeds are burnt as well, so you don't have weeds coming up in your following crops. So I think I learnt a lot about how I had previously seen Punjab, and my perception did change. At first I was really shocked, and I was really kind of saddened by how I was now seeing Punjab. But then we started to be invited to different people's houses, and the farmers that we filmed, they would say, come to our house, come and meet our family. That was like so important to them. And obviously we'd go to their house and they would like force us to drink fresh cow's milk, and they didn't understand that this could potentially make us really ill. But it was like, no, you must come to our house, you must eat our food, you must, because that is the Punjabi spirit. And I also learnt a lot about who I am and where I come from, and those kind of cultural values. So yeah, I learnt about, I suppose, both the good and the bad, and I think it's probably true of every culture in every part of the world, that there is a bit of both. So yeah, I think the rose-tinted glasses came off, but that doesn't mean that I saw Punjab in a kind of negative light. I actually learnt so much about realness, and about resilience and struggle, and about love and compassion, which I never expected at all.
I think I really resonate with what you said, because to me the people of Punjab sort of epitomize, they embody this spirit of just such joy. It's like there is just this utter joy of life. And when you think of the challenges that they face on an everyday basis, the worry, the stress, the fear, you realize just how strong internally they have to be able to be so happy at all times in spite of what's going on in their own backyard. So yeah, I guess it does make you realize just what an amazing people it is that we deal with from that part of the world. And one is proud to be a Punjabi. But okay, coming to the practical side, the technical side of things. Now, this is a documentary, like I said, it's sort of gone across the world. It's won awards across the world. You said that you went out there with a young friend straight after university. You were backpacking when you went across. So what are the technical challenges? I mean, did you take equipment with you, or is this literally the smartphone filming everything like they say that they can do today? I mean, I'm waiting for this magic to happen in my life where I can just take out my smartphone and sort of make this documentary, this docudrama with it.
Yeah. So yeah, in 2014, I suppose smartphones were not, such a big deal as they are now. So in 2014, they were not such good quality. So what we were filming on were DSLRs. So we both had Canon 5D Mark IIs or Mark IIIs, something like that, which was like the camera which changed the game, which allowed photographers to then become filmmakers kind of at the click of a button. So that was I suppose the kind of technical context to our filming. And yes, we were backpacking, so we literally had those backpacks. We didn't have a huge amount of weight that we were allowed to carry. And so we had very basic equipment. So I think we had one camera each. I think I had 2 lenses, probably Lever had a couple of lenses, and we had these really rickety tripods, which were like so flimsy, like you can't even believe that they were like that the interviews happened on them. And that actually, I found it really liberating because it meant that I could think outside the box, which is something I love doing. And I love being pushed into a scenario where I have to make things work. That's kind of where I thrive. So I remember asking one of the farmers if he had a skateboard and a plank of wood, because I needed to do this tracking shot of a field, of this burnt field. And that's what we did. That's literally what we did. So, you know, those kind of situations, they can feel quite limiting, but I think that space is also sometimes where creativity thrives, and being able to think outside the box and find new ways of doing things. For me as an artist, I find it really helpful and really supportive. So yeah, I mean, it was a challenge not having everything and all of that kind of stuff, but the story for us is the most important thing. And having interviews which had so much depth to them it is the thing that kind of moves the documentary along. And yes, you know, as a visual person, I am really interested in how things look, and I always want to make films that look good, but the story is kind of king, and the story is what drives everything. And I think you can also kind of forgive the visuals if the story is so compelling that, you know, it almost, I feel like the visuals add to the story rather than the other way around. So yeah, it was important to have a really strong story for us.
I think that's a great point to take back with us anyway, that yeah, if things don't go great visually speaking, so long as the story is strong, people would stay with you. But okay, so the other, I mean, because of course today you were talking about sort of balancing and making sure that the camera didn't wobble. I've just discovered that now you can buy something called a gimbal, where you can attach your camera and it makes sure that it stays straight. And I was like, where was all this when I thought I had the ambition to be a filmmaker? But okay, talking about practical stuff, what about funding? Because I know that British Asian films are not easy to get funding for as a rule. So what did you do about that? Because that's something that a lot of young people today who are wanting to turn towards making films or making videos or going digital, they're going to struggle with that. So what do you do?
Thank you for asking that. This is something I really want to share, actually, because I have been in positions where I've really struggled with funding. And it's important for us to, as artists, to understand how to get funding so that we can create the work that we want to create. It's a different thing if you're being commissioned to make something, because then you have a commissioner and you have to kind of satisfy them and make sure that whatever you create, it fits into what they want to put out there. But having funding means essentially that you're able to go through that process yourself and rely on yourself and make decisions yourself, which for me has been really, really supportive to kind of build my confidence and to build my skill set. So in terms of Toxification, because it was never planned to be a feature film, we had no budget. It was a complete kind of zero budget film. So Leva and I were traveling anyway. We were backpacking anyway. So there were, you know, we were obviously kind of paying for ourselves to move around the world. And we already had our kit and we already had all of those things. So it was a completely zero budget film. When we came back to the UK, we spent 3 months, we literally took 3 months off work and we edited like most days, every day for 3 months. And again, that was completely unpaid. So that was, yeah, I mean, it was challenging, but it was something that I feel kind of had to happen in this instance. What happened after that is that we ran a crowdfunding campaign, an online crowdfunding campaign, because we needed to pay for things like the sound design in the soundtrack, which were things that we were not able to kind of do in-house. But everything that we could do in-house, we did in-house. Leva even learnt how to animate so that we could add some animation to the film. That's how zero budget it was. So yeah, and then we did a crowdfunder. And then after that, like once we had kind of finished the film, we then wanted to take it into cinemas, it was really important for us that the film was out on a platform which was going to really support it. So, you know, there was the conversation about what do we do? Shall we just put it on YouTube? And we decided, no, this film needs to be watched on a big screen, because it needs to have that impact that, you know, we've literally poured our lives, you know, into this. We've poured the last kind of couple of years of our lives into this film, and it needs to be on a big screen. And so that was really important to us. So we knew that we had to raise some money for that. And so I learnt a huge amount about producing, because we didn't have a producer on this film. It was just kind of coming together, roping in friends and family, and trying to understand how to get cinema screening sponsored. And so we put together a kind of press pack. We put together sponsorship packages. So we had gold, silver and bronze sponsorship packages. And then we had our premiere. And the premiere was really important. It was in central London. And again, we were sponsored. The venue like completely kind of sponsored us. So the whole thing, again, we kind of didn't have to pay for that. We didn't have to pay for anything. And they, you know, they did it really well. They put on canapes and things like that. It was Ernest and Young in central London. And it was a massive, massive thing. And we had invited, I think we probably had 500 tickets or something like that. And we invited those people who we thought would be interested in sponsoring cinema screenings moving forward. So it was a big thing. It was a large scale thing, and it was something that we really worked hard on, because we had to see it in cinemas. It was, you know, it was just something that we had to see. And so on the day we showed the film, and then we also had some conversations about, you know, how people can sponsor the film. They also were emailed all of the sponsorship packages, and that evening we had a number of sponsors come on board, so we were able to get it into cinemas. And then from there on, we've had kind of other sponsors coming on board in order to get it onto Amazon Prime Video, which is where it is now. So that was the process that we took for Toxification. I'm not sure it's a process that I will follow again, because of the kind of years of work that went into it that were unpaid. I think that's I'm really happy, and I'm really glad that I did it for this project, and I feel quite good knowing that you know, it was a voluntary project, and knowing how much I kind of care on a sort of personal level about these people and about these stories. So I feel good about that, but it's not a sustainable way for me to work. And that's something I kind of realised quite early on. But yeah, I mean, because it was not planned, that was just the way that it went. So in future, I think what I would like to do is to get funding. And there are different streams of funding. You're right that it can be quite challenging to get funding for, firstly for documentaries, and secondly for documentaries which are made outside of the UK. But there are streams. I know that BFI have, I think, a couple of streams. And so that's what I'm going to be looking into in the future. But in terms of kind of films which are focused on the UK and films which are not documentaries, it's much easier to get those funded. The Arts Council is probably one of the biggest funders of the arts in the UK, if not the biggest funder. So yeah, there are lots of streams. I think as artists, what I've found so difficult is that I just want to make a film. Like, I'm not interested in the paperwork. I'm not interested in, you know, applying for funding or doing these funding applications. That's not my forte, and it's not something, you know, I want to do. If I wanted to do that, then I would have studied arts marketing or something like that. So I think that's the struggle that myself and many of the artists that I know go through. And so it might be an option to collaborate with someone who is able to do that process, or it might be an opportunity to learn about a different part of the process. For me, it's been an opportunity to learn, and I've actually, in some ways, quite enjoyed learning about the back end and about how, you know, funding is awarded and things like that. That's been quite interesting for me, and making connections so that I can you know, have films sponsored in the future. I think that would be really supportive for me. So I'm definitely on this journey. I wouldn't say I've kind of figured it all out, but my experience has taught me a lot. The main thing is that it has to be sustainable. It has to work. As artists, it's really common to be asked to do things for free, and I just don't I don't believe in that anymore. I've in the last kind of 10 years of working, I've had so many people kind of ask me to do things for free, and sometimes I do because I really care about that person, or I want to support them, or they're a friend or whatever, or I care about their project. That's a decision that I make myself, but I don't buy into this idea anymore that artists have to be poor, like that artists have to be like struggling and never able to make ends meet. That doesn't work for me anymore, and I don't see why as artists we should kind of be put into this box of that's who you are and that's how you should be. That doesn't work for me anymore. I don't see why we should be asked or expected to do things for free because other people have careers and they're not expected to do those things for free. So yeah, I mean, it's a challenging subject, but I think there is definitely room to collaborate or to just learn about it yourself.
Yeah, I think the two things I take away from that is that, yes, it is an extremely difficult thing to do, but that it's not impossible. It just means getting your head around something else. Because like you, as an artist, I just want to be able to create. I don't need to be doing these other things which have to do with admin. And so tell me something. So how has that been of help to you? Because I know you've collaborated with ECDP a great deal. And has that been something that's helped you a lot?
Yeah, I'm so grateful to ECDP for all of their support. So they have supported me literally since the beginning, since I graduated from university with my degree in photography. So I've worked in a number of different capacities with ECDP. So I've run photography workshops in schools with them. I've also given a number of talks in libraries and in different areas, in different places with ECDP. And I think what's most supportive for me is that they're like my biggest champions. They always support me every time I kind of like hit a new milestone. I know I can count on them to say, oh, we'd love to feature you in our in our whatever they're putting out, in our mailing list or whatever. Can you write a few words for us because we really like to feature you? And I know that they're always going to retweet everything that I'm sharing and everything that I'm kind of experiencing and learning. And that's really important because a lot of us as artists, we don't have those kind of support systems, or if we do have the support systems, it's always kind of welcome to have more and to know that there are people behind you supporting you, and to know that there are people who are kind of shouting about the work that you do and really championing you. That's been the most helpful thing for me.
That's amazing. Yeah, it is all about visibility, isn't it? You can be the best artist in the world, but if nobody knows you, then I guess, where do you go? And this is such a great platform to just become visible because it takes you out to a huge community. So, well, that's really great to hear. And I hope that everybody listening in will actually understand that there is an organization that they can go to for support, even if it's emotional support or visibility support, which is a huge thing as far as I'm concerned. It's a brilliant thing to go to. Tell me, we also know that you teach yoga and you're a Reiki master. Is that in any way connected to your work on films? Is it something that you do to balance it out? Is it on the opposite side of the spectrum? How does that fit in?
Yeah, so I think for a long time I've felt like I do so many different things, and they're so different. And where do I stand? And in the last, I suppose, since lockdown began in March of 2020, I've had a lot of time to reflect and to go deeper into my practice, and that's both kind of like the well-being side as well as the visual arts side. And I really feel like they are so interconnected now that I actually struggle to separate them now, which is a good place for me to be, because I feel like I'm becoming kind of like more whole in my practice. So visual arts for me have always been it's always been an emotional process, because it's about you, and being able to express myself has always been something that supports my mental health and my emotional well-being. That's definitely been a part of my journey as a human being. So for me, visual arts connect so well with the yoga and the mindfulness and the Reiki and all of those kind of healing modalities that I work with now, because they're kind of one and the same. And I run a lot of workshops, which are creative workshops, which bring in conversations about mental health and emotional well-being through the very, very powerful act of expressing yourself through visual arts. So for instance, I have a mindful photography kind of like online workshop, and that is all about learning to express yourself through photography. And this is like, you don't have to have a special camera, it's just an iPhone course, or whatever camera that you've got, you can kind of participate in this course. And it's about understanding kind of the process of exploring and expressing myself through this modality, which happens to be photography. But that process can happen through yoga, or through mindfulness, which is basically another word for meditation, or through all of these different modalities. And for me, they're so very connected now. And even in terms of my filmmaking practice, I've brought so much mindfulness into that practice now, to the point where the process of making the film is almost just as important as the end product. So ensuring that there is mindfulness in the process, ensuring that everyone in the process, from the interviewer to the interviewee to the camera operator, ensuring that everyone is emotionally and mentally kind of supported, and ensuring that I'm kind of doing what I can to facilitate that process at every level. So I feel really grateful that I've been kind of learning these new tools for supporting people in different ways. And I think one of the key points about my work is creating safety, so creating safe spaces. And I can use that within my filmmaking process to ensure that the interviewee feels safe to share whatever topic we're talking about. I can use that within yoga to ensure that my students in my class feel safe and there is safety. And I can use that within my workshops to ensure that there's safety in the room, there's safety with the things that people are expressing, and most importantly, to share techniques for people to find safety within themselves and within their own bodies. So I'm still kind of moving through this journey, but I'm loving it so much, and really kind of excited to see where it takes me in the future.
And that safe space is just so important, and that balance, isn't it? Because as in any kind of creative work, we need to raise so much of our adrenaline, so much energy within us to bring out the best that is within us, that energy is so volatile, it really shakes you up. So to be able to then have a safe space inside you to retreat to rebalance, that's just amazing. And the fact that you can bring the two things together, that's just, like I said, your skill set at the moment is gold dust. You're just amazing. Okay, so to finish, there's a couple of things. One is that you mentioned that you're doing this online photography course. Tell me can you tell our audiences where to find that? Because I know I'm going to be signing up. So just tell us where we can find that photography course to start with, and then I'll ask you my question.
Yeah, so it's a mindful photography course. It's a 6-week online course, and you can find details on my website as well as on ECDP's website, and I believe it will be in their newsletter as well. And my website is www.rehmatrayatt.com.
That's fabulous. So if you were to give one little tip to somebody to say, okay, if you're taking a photo, and this is the ideal way of looking at a frame, when you take that photo, what is that tip that you would give them?
Yeah, in terms of the frame, wow, there's so much. I think the most important tip I can give anyone is kind of going back to basics and getting a real deep understanding of what you want to say. So I often ask myself, if I feel a bit stuck and I'm not really sure what I'm doing, I'll ask myself the question, what am I trying to say? Or what am I trying to portray? Or what am I trying to get the viewer to feel? Or, what am I trying to express? Because without that clarity, the work is never going to it's never going to come across in the way that you want it to. So I would say, have a think about, what do I want to say in the world? What piece of information do I want to share? Is it, it could be as simple as, I would like to add beauty to the world. I would like to bring more beauty into the world. And then, that's my mission. So I'm going to create beautiful photographs, and that's okay. It could be something more political. It could be, something about myself that I really want to share with others, so that others feel more able to share that about themselves. So it could be anything, but I think the most important thing is to get clear about what that is, so that you can then explore that through your own process and your own journey.
That's a really good tip, actually. I shall think about that the next time I try and take a photo, because I'll tell you what, I'm a barbarian when it comes to taking photos. I look at something, I think it's so beautiful, and I take a picture, and then it's just like, oh my God, what happened? So yeah, I will definitely try and remember that the next time. And the very last thing that I want to ask is, so your one little tip for somebody going out to create a video or a film on their smartphone, because we're being told all the time these days that your smartphone can do it all. So, for me personally, I find that I wouldn't even know how to hold my camera. Is there just something that you would start off by saying when you begin this journey of saying, okay, I'm going to start by making a little video?
Yeah, from a kind of more of a storytelling point of view, again, so firstly, think about what you want to say, and then the second thing is to think about how to say that. So if I'm creating this scene of someone who is feeling very lonely or something, they've broken up with their boyfriend or whatever. So I'm trying to create this scene of someone who's feeling very lonely. It's very easy to go, oh, okay, so I'll have a shot of her walking down the street, and it'll be a close-up, and then we'll cut to a side view, and then she'll be walking, and then, it's very easy to get really excited about the technical side and think, oh, let me just film loads of different shots and then put them together. But actually, in that situation, what's going to make her look most kind of lonely is having a really wide angle shot, so moving really far back, and you've just got a shot of her walking down the street, and it's a long take, there are no cuts. That's what's going to make her look the most lonely and the most alone and the most isolated. So it's about thinking about firstly what you want to say, and then translating that into kind of camera speak, and understanding how I can portray that.
Oh, that is so amazing. Yes, because I can almost visualize it. You have the big wide world and then one solitary figure, and that just creates so much more of an impactful image, doesn't it? Oh, that's amazing. Gosh, thank you. Rehmat, in finishing, I know that you have a possible collaboration coming up with ECDP very soon on a course that you're planning to run to teach people like me and a lot of other people out there who wish to learn about how to use your smartphone as your best friend, as something that you can shoot films on not just sort of home videos. And that's going to be available in the new newsletter coming up. It'll be on your website as well. It'll be on the ECDP website as well. Is there a time span that we should be looking out for this particular course?
I think it's going to be coming up in kind of the near future. So yeah, definitely keep checking back and keep your eyes peeled for the newsletter.
Thank you so much for everything. I've really enjoyed hearing all about your journey in making Toxification. And I think that was a film that really, really touched my heart. It just spoke to me. And the fact that, as I said, 3 months now where it's been on the very top headlines of Indian news, considering everything else that the world is going through, it's not been the COVID-19 pandemic, it's been the farmer suicide problems that have been on the top of the news. So, yeah, I think that your documentary really does have a lot of capacity to touch people at this point as well. So thank you once again for joining us. I hope everybody out there enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And if you did, do please like, comment, subscribe on the video. If you have any questions or you want to just reach out for artistic support, you can reach ECDP on their website, which is ECDP.com. If you have any questions for Rehmat, or if you want to follow her on one of her courses, her website is rehmatrayatt.com. We will see you here next week. In the meantime, stay well, stay safe.